Welcome, everybody. I am delighted to present this year's Grady 40 under 40 class, minus Michael, who will be here as we roll, right? 40 under 40, for those of you who are not familiar with it, every year, alumni, faculty members, people across the college nominate people who are outstanding in their fields and under the age of 40. That's hence the 40 under 40 title. There are 17 colleges at the University of Georgia, so do the math. We've got 5 in the 40 under 40, 6. I corrected my math in real time. 6 this year of the 40 under 40. So I think it speaks to the leadership of this college and the careers that people launch from this college, which makes me very, very, very happy. I'm delighted to turn this panel over to Darby Taylor, a Grady student who actually, Darby.
Thank you. Is my microphone on? Oh, perfect. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Darby Taylor. I'm a fourth-year Entertainment and Media Studies major and Grady ambassador. Very honored to be moderating this panel alongside some very successful honorees. So today we're just going to be talking about what our honorees have been up to since graduating, their career paths so far, and some advice they wish they would have known when they were students. So I'm going to turn it over to them for some brief introductions. Chad, if you would like to start.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Chad Mumm. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Vox Media Studios out in Los Angeles, California. I graduated in 2008 from this great college. I guess in terms of intros, I'm from Georgia. The week I graduated, I drove my car to New York City and just never looked back. But I was one of the founders of a media company called Vox Media. You may know Vox and New York Magazine and Eater and SB Nation, things like that. And I ran our digital business for a while and then started an ad agency, and then 7 years ago moved to California to start our film and TV studio. So we make movies and TV shows for Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Apple, Amazon, everything else like that. Yeah, it's amazing to be back and excited to meet everybody.
And then Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lauren Culbertson Grieco. I graduated in 2009 from Grady. I'm from Marietta, Georgia. I went to Lassiter High School, so Georgia, born, bred, and educated. Love the UGA. I'm really excited to be here with you all. I lead U.S. public policy at Twitter. I've been at the company for about 5 years. Before that, when I was a student here, I took Karen Russell's new media class, because that's what it was called then. And it was one of the first classes, I think, that UGA and maybe at the university level was offered around how to utilize social media for a purpose for an organization or a company. And so I graduated in 2009 during the last recession and got a little creative. And I ended up on Senator Johnny Isakson's re-elect campaign because they needed someone who knew how to tweet. And so fast forward, I worked for Senator Isakson as his press secretary in Washington. I started my own consulting firm to work with Silicon Valley companies and startups who were starting to enter into the DC political world. And then I joined Twitter. So like I said, I've been there for 5 years. So really excited to talk to you all today, and thanks for having me.
I'm going to be honest, this is hard to follow up.
You tweet too.
I also can tweet, yes. Not on your level. My name is Emily Curl. I am the national digital and social host at iHeartRadio. I graduated from Georgia in 2014, and I have to say, it is so wild to be back and so nice to see all of you in the audience. So this is just a crazy experience, and we're really glad to be here. I live in New York, and so with my job, I conduct all of our major artist interviews. I do our backstage moments, a lot of our red carpets. I'm fully in the entertainment sphere, which I love. And I actually got my start working at Refinery 29, if anyone is familiar. They're a major fashion and lifestyle brand. Yes, I see some nods. And I worked in production there and was a producer and a host at Refinery before I moved over to iHeartRadio. And I'm so excited to be here, like they said. So this is going to be great. And I'm going to pass it over to Kevin, who happens to be my very best friend in the world. So this is special. We get to share this together.
Hi, everybody. Oh, yeah, let's clap for I'm like, who cares about my best friend? My name is Kevin Schatell. First of all, how are you feeling? You feeling good at the start of a new year? This is very surreal to be sitting in this room with my parents right off to the side. Because before I get into what I do, I have very early memories of Grady College. My sister was a Grady student, and I used to get checked out of my middle school to drive up to Athens and watch her do Grady News Source, and I always wanted to follow in her footsteps, so to be here is very surreal. I graduated in 2016. I was an EMST student, like Darby, and I always wanted to move to New York, so the perfect vessel for me was the NBC Page program. I moved in 2016, 2 weeks after graduation, started that journey. It was a year long, rotating through different assignments in 30 Rock, and then I landed my ultimate dream job. I'm a producer at the Today Show, so I get to handle not only our audience every morning out in Rockefeller Center, but produce segments and interviews and concerts, and I mean, every single day I pinch myself, and it's all thanks to, I'm looking at lots of faces, Biddle and Samantha and EJ. The people in this room gave us that opportunity, so it is so cool to be with you, and go Dogs.
I love that.
Hi guys, I'm Michael Waldron. I entered this panel how I usually entered my Grady classes, running in frantically right as it began. But I'm so happy to be here. I'm from Atlanta. I went to Milton High School. I graduated in 2010 from Grady, and I'm a screenwriter. I got my start as a intern on the show Rick and Morty on the very first season. I was changing toilet seats in the production office, and kind of grew up on that show, and would later on, I was a writer and producer on that show. And then I guess most recently I wrote and created the Loki show on Disney Plus, and I wrote Doctor Strange 2, which came out earlier this year. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I live in LA.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here, regardless of whenever you showed up. But each of you kind of covered what you studied here, but can you all go over like what you were involved with on campus, like other student organizations and extracurriculars? Michael, we could start with you, work backwards.
Yes. Not a lot. It was a lot of like just watching movies. I feel like is what I was involved in. I think about when I started out as an advertising major and switched over to, at the time it was telecom, and I studied under Professor Biddle and kind of learned, okay, here's how you make a movie, and that was what I started doing around campus with like my BlackBerry, running around making movies and stuff, and so I had my eye on that very early on. I was in a fraternity, but it got kicked off camp.
Right. Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I just watched your movie, by the way. I literally paused it on the frame where it said written by Michael
Oh,
Waldron.
thank you.
I took a little picture.
Did you watch it on the plane? Was it on the plane?
No, I watched it a few weeks ago. Are y'all not like starstruck that he's here right now? When I first got onto campus, I think my first activity that I got involved in was dog camp. I did a little bit of SGA, but the most life-changing experience pre-Grady, and then through my entire life, I would attribute to the man sitting right over here, Eric Johnson. I was a freshman with a Jimmy Neutron haircut, walking into the visitor center to interview to be a tour guide. I wanted that so desperately because I love this campus. I knew it would help me develop my presenting skills, and little did I know that interview would change the course of my life, give me my best friend, give me my community in New York still to this day. So especially if you're early on in your career here at Georgia, keep that on your radar. I was an intern with Seacrest Studios, which was very surreal because the commencement speaker the year I graduated was Ryan Seacrest. So getting to meet him at the end of that was incredible. And then the most game-changing experience here at Grady for me, highly recommend, was being a Grady ambassador. I mean, that's how I know so many of these faces. So yeah, where are the ambassadors? I saw a fist bump over there. Yeah. That's how I got to meet so many of my friends and mentors here at Grady and really dive in. Dean Davis opening his home. It's just a standout college memory for me. So that's a little overview of what I was involved in here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dory. I can echo Kevin. I also can attribute a lot to Eric Johnson, who's over there. I started at the Visitor Center when I was a freshman. And I think Kevin put it perfectly. I didn't quite realize the impact it was going to have on me, but I think what's so profound about working at the VC that I did for 4 years is that you make connections that truly last really like a lifetime. I mean, it's wild how many people in New York that I've met through the VC that we share these funny moments together and these memories. But again, all these people are doing such amazing things, so it's really cool to have those relationships. So the VC really changed a lot for me, and also just taught like the art of having a conversation. I think sometimes you forget that that's a skill that you have to practice, and what being a good listener looks like, and how to present information in a certain way. And so I think those skills are invaluable. So I was at the VC, and then I also was an orientation leader, 2012, which was such an amazing.
She was my orientation leader, by the way.
And yeah, I see someone in the back. What's so funny is at orientation, I was talking about entertainment and how I wanted to be Juliana Rancic on E! News. And in the front row, someone gasped. I looked down, it's Kevin. And so from then on, I mean, orientation gave me so many amazing friends, but also let me, meet a lot of incredible students as well. And that was such a really impactful summer. So I did orientation. I also was a Zeta, and that really got me involved in philanthropy and understanding what it's like to be a part of a bigger organization. And I really, really enjoyed that. And then another thing that we did on the side too in Grady was Kevin and I actually started just as a side project our own entertainment show. And that was something fun. And so I really encourage students that if there's not a path just yet that's perfect for you, that you can also start your own thing and just try it and see and make mistakes and see what you like too, which was, I feel like, really fun for us to practice. It's not all about Kevin, but I'm excited to be here with Kevin. So those are all mine.
Perfect, thank you.
I, too, was a sorority girl. I was a Kappa Delta, and that actually got me into a lot of philanthropic work. So that actually got me to be involved with UGA Heroes, where I was on the board for that. I was the PR chair. So I actually got to take the skills I was learning at Grady and then apply them and test them out as the PR chair for UGA Heroes. So that was probably one of the most impactful experiences I had, because working in the nonprofit world and practicing those skills, it really made me be able to leap into my first job in politics. So trying to find those applicable experiences while you're here in some of these volunteer organizations is really invaluable. I also did the Richard B. Russell Leadership Fellow program, which was really, really great. I really encourage people to apply for that. And then I was involved with Blue Key, which is also very politically active too. So if you're interested in politics, I'd also say, try to get involved with that organization.
I would say I feel a lot of kindred experience to Michael, where I was not in a bunch of clubs and mainly watched a lot of movies and hung around campus, went to a lot of the games. When I was here, 2004 to 2008, I wanted to make movies and TV shows, and Grady really didn't have a program for that. It was telecom arts, but really, it was more oriented around, E&G, news gathering, that kind of thing. And so I was kind of involved in News Source. My roommates through college were all very involved, but I would just basically take the cameras off campus and go and make films. And actually one time, I had never admitted this out loud, but I borrowed a camera for the weekend and took it to South America to direct a doc. It wasn't supposed to leave campus, and that was a real experience. So I made it back, the camera made it back, it was fine. And I guess for me, one of the class that really made the biggest difference is one of the telecom arts, we did a media studies class, and it really was the first time that I saw you could make mainstream entertainment and still look at it critically. So a big hit movie or a big hit TV show and still think about the art and craft behind that. And that was always something that really appealed to me. Obviously, I love the art movies, but also big entertainment. And so that was a big moment. And then for me, I studied abroad at the Georgia at Oxford program. It had nothing to do, I was studying ancient religion, but it had nothing to do with, being in film and TV, but it was an amazing experience. So I encourage you while you're here to just kind of soak up everything that the college has to offer and the school has to offer. I also played a lot of golf while I was here. I worked at the golf course so I could play for free. I never thought that would end up working out, but I actually am making a Drive to Survive spinoff in pro golf for Netflix right now. So it works. It works.
Full circle moment there. Thank you guys. So what is one piece of advice each of you would tell your younger selves about breaking into your various areas of the industry? Anyone can start. A little tough, sorry. Is it too early?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for me, it was really like the best part about technology now, and whether that's social media or cameras or cell phones, like it used to be that to get access to tools to make stuff, you had to kind of start at the bottom and work your way up. Cameras were super expensive. I mean, when I was like first getting started, I think it was like before the Red camera had even been launched. So it was like if you want to make something, you had to shoot on Super 16, and it was incredibly expensive. By the time that I graduated, it was like I had Final Cut on my laptop. It was probably stolen. Not the laptop, the software. And I had like a little camera, and you could make stuff, and then you could find an audience. Like you could put it out. My first project that I ever made was like a web show that ended up being really popular. It got in front of millions of people. And so just the barrier to entry to making things is so low these days. And I think that both in terms of creating content, distributing it, get in front of an audience, marketing it. So I wouldn't be afraid to just go and do it. Don't be afraid to pick up a camera or write a screenplay. Those are the kind of things like use your early part of your career to make those mistakes and get good at it. You learn from, every time you do it, you learn something new. And then, I think just my biggest mistake probably was I felt like I was had to do it all by myself. And so when I went to New York, it was like, I'm going to do this on my own. And I didn't really ask for help. And I think like, you see a bunch of alumni here and also, your professors and the staff of the college, like we're here and accessible, and just, ask a professor for an introduction, and we're happy to try and, find opportunities for students. And I love working with students and trying to help them either, get interviews or land their first job or even just for advice. And I wish I would have asked for help, honestly. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
I completely agree with asking for help, and I will always meet with a UGA student if you want to talk about working in politics or getting a job in politics. I would say if you do want to work in this field, the beginnings can be pretty brutal, but totally fun and totally worth it. I worked on a campaign, and so what that means is you are working every day for months. For me, it was a year. It was pretty nuts. But some of the best memories I have are from that time. Another option is to go and get an internship or an entry-level role on Capitol Hill. There's also the state capitol here, or maybe if you're from somewhere else, you might want to check that out. But I'm happy to talk to folks if you're interested in getting into politics.
I think my biggest piece of advice, and as someone who was pursuing, I knew I wanted to be an on-camera entertainment host, and I think what I would tell myself looking back is just take your time. Don't worry so much. I think when I first graduated, I was like, I have to get this job. I have to move to Seattle and be on their news program, which is actually extremely hard. It's like one of the hardest markets. That's a whole other thing. But anyways, I was applying to so many places, being like, if I am not on camera by the time I'm 23, it's never going to happen for me. And it's not true. I think it takes a long time to find your voice and to find out what you want to say and what you want to put out into the world and the content that you want to make. And so when I got my start working in production at Refinery, I was a PA, a production assistant, and I was taking the coffee orders and stapling the papers. But what that taught me is I got to shadow a lot of directors. I got to see a lot of people write scripts, work with high-profile talent, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And so I got to soak up all this knowledge for a long time. And then when I actually did start auditioning, it took me a year to land my job at iHeartRadio. I auditioned for a full year at a lot of places. And so I'm so happy of where I ended up. I love music. It's such an amazing team that I work on, and it worked out really, really well for me. And now looking back, I'm like, I don't know why I was so rushed. I needed all those years to gain that experience, to understand how production works, how talent works, how all of those things play a part of being a host and working in the entertainment industry. And so that's my biggest piece of advice, is just take the next right step, what feels right for you, what feels in line with you, and go from there. And just take a deep breath and learn as much as you can, soak it all in before you jump to conclusions like I did. My mom's laughing because she knows. She was with me on every call.
I love that. Mine are kind of twofold. One personal, one sort of professional. One of the best pieces of advice I got, my first internship in New York. First of all, anyone dream of living in New York City one day? Like, that's been a lifelong dream for you? Okay, 2 hands. Where else are y'all gonna go? LA. I had this really strong dream of living in New York. My first summer I was there was really tough. It was tough to be away from home, and one of the interns that I was with said, "Kevin, you have nothing to prove, only to share." And that has kind of stuck with me, whether it's an assignment, an interview, a panel, whatever it is that you're presenting yourself, you have nothing to prove. You don't have to, your worth is not in what other people think of you. You just have skills, stories, experience to share. And if you kind of reframe in that way, it takes away some of the anxiety as you choose next steps and you put yourself out there. So I loved that advice. And the second thing I wish I would have developed even earlier on is the art of asking good questions. Because what I do as a producer, or could be professionally prepping questions for Hoda to interview whoever, Harry Styles or whoever, or a student who's going to ask for an informational interview with somebody up here. It's all about asking the right questions, being genuinely curious in how you craft those, not just asking the basic ones, really doing your research and knowing that. I think if I had cultivated that sooner, that would have helped along the way too.
We also joke about that in our dating lives. We're like, if they don't ask questions, they're out.
We're done. They're done. Goodbye. Thank you.
I'm asking good questions.
Oh, Darby, you're
Darby,
crushing
you're
it.
doing
You're
great.
crushing it. But I think that shows a level of curiosity, interest, and passion when you've done your research.
Yeah.
Whether it could be asking for help, whatever it is, asking the right questions.
Be on time. Super important in what people think of you. It really reflects on your personal integrity. I think that finishing projects, actually it's easy to have an idea, a creative idea, but to actually start something and see it all the way through, to see it through the parts where it feels like that idea sucks. And it's like I should throw this away, to fight through that and to get it to a place where it's finished and now you have something you can revise, that you can edit. That's where the brilliance in any creative thing really comes from. So I think the earlier in your careers that you can learn the value of just finishing things, that is hugely important. And then, I think the other thing is really, to the extent that you can kind of know what you want to do and tell people that and declare that, knowing it's like even when I was changing toilet seats, I made sure that everybody at Rick and Morty knew I wanted to be a writer. That it's like, so when the opportunity came to write some stupid copy for an advertisement, it's like, well, go get the guy with his head in the toilet, because he keeps talking about how he's a writer and that's what he wants to do, and let's give him the chance to prove that. And so don't be afraid to call your shot. I think that people respond to that, and it and it helps you believe in what you're trying to do.
That was some great advice. Thank you all. So all of you have made a big geographical move after graduation. So what tips do you have for everyone out in the audience who wants to go to New York, LA, anywhere that's not Athens, Atlanta? Just do it.
Yeah, it'll be the best thing you've ever did. It's so good to. It's spending the time here in Athens is amazing, but the way you will grow as a person in ways that you simply can't imagine. Just you'll be exposed to so many different viewpoints, ideas, people. It is, even if you weren't doing it as a professional necessity, just getting out to another part of the country, another part of the world is the best thing you can do. So yeah, I don't know. It's such a good, healthy thing, and it'll make you a better artist in every way.
I think pre-college for me, back to that dream of living in New York, there was a season when I was like, my brother and sister both went to Georgia. I thought, do I branch out? Do I leap right into New York City after graduation? Thank God I didn't. because for me, it all comes back to the idea of roots before branches, right? That you are planting your roots in the best town with the best resources at the best university. And then suddenly you're in New York, and this is what happened for me. I started the PAGE program. I was on one of my assignments in HR with our talent development and was helping set up the room for an executive meeting. And at the time, there was someone who worked in HR. Our chief talent officer introduced me to her. Her name is Vicky. You got to meet Kevin. He's a Georgia grad. Vicky's a Georgia grad. We connected. You know what Vicky does now? Vicky, of course you don't. How would they know what Vicky does? You know what she does now? She is the Chief Human Resources Officer for NBC Universal. She sits on the 51st floor of 30 Rock with an office about the size of this room. She is the nicest person in the world. And suddenly, now we're connected. We're like, okay, now that Maria Taylor's at NBC, let's plan an event. Let's get all of the New York dogs together. And suddenly, that's the magic of going to a place like New York when your roots are planted here, is that it carries you and you get to branch out and have a community wherever you're going. There's a community already there.
Yeah, we have a similar dynamic in DC, and it's an amazing network of people. And actually, we also have it at Twitter. We have a lot of UGA grads. We had a panel here a few years ago, right before COVID, where we had people who did all different things at the company. And so, but I would just say, like, going back to something you said, is you will grow so much by getting different experiences. Personally, I love to travel. It's one of my favorite things. And it has been, I think, the one thing I've done in my personal life that has made such an impact on my professional life. I'm in a people business. And so when you travel the world, you meet different people, you see how people live in different places and different cultures. It really not only changes your perspective and you grow and you gain that perspective, but it also helps you reflect on who you are as a person and what you value, and it gives you a completely a new lens on life and the work that you do.
Yeah. I think I'll add one thing. When I was y'all, this story. When I graduated, I was so determined to move to New York. Because like I said, I was going to be Juliana Rancic on E! News. I was so set. My best friend had moved there, and so on my resume, I actually lied about my address and put her address down, having never been to New York. I don't recommend that, okay? It ended up working out, but it was a whole stretch. But I think it goes back to what Michael was saying in the sense of, like, if you want something bad enough, you just have to make it happen. And I wanted it so badly that my mom is shaking her head because it was turmoil in the Curl household for a little bit. But I moved to New York truly in a weekend. I was like, okay, I guess I live here now. I had to buy a coat. I had to learn the subway. But again, I think you just have to be, and the entertainment industry is so difficult, but it's worth it. But you just have to be sure that it's what you want to do. And so again, I think when you're dedicated like that, you're going to make it happen. And New York and LA, are great places to do that.
Seriously, buy a coat if you move anywhere colder.
And a warm one. Don't just get it because it's cute.
It took me 2 years to learn how to dress in DC.
I think the best New York advice I have is that the avenues go north-south and the streets go east-west.
Write that down.
Write that down. That even numbers go east one way, odd numbers go west one way. That's everything you need to know about New York City.
Perfect, thank you. So we touched on like alumni networks a bit. So how have you guys found it like easy, or, like what was the best way to like reach out to alumni and find them and like actually build a connection with them?
I feel it's a lot better now.
I just answered first last time. So first this time.
I'm sure that all, like things like this were happening when I was here, but maybe I didn't get the memo or didn't pay attention. But certainly now, like I think with Dean Davis and what the college has done and the great staff here, like they've created so many opportunities with the mentorship programs, with all of the Grady in LA, and even now like with the studios here in Atlanta, like there's so many opportunities to get exposure to this world. And I think that the best, really when it comes to making connections, it's like just ask for that intro. And I always say to people, like if I get a lot of email and I get a lot of introductions, like sometimes I miss it the first time around. Don't hesitate to follow up. Just like always follow up at least once. If someone is nice enough to connect you to someone else and they don't respond right away, don't be afraid to just send a follow-up note, checking back in. If you don't hear back after that, you might not hear back, but like, definitely don't be afraid to follow up and take advantage of the network that you have here. Because again, I'll always make time and do a coffee or a Zoom or something with a student. It's from anywhere, but especially from Georgia. And sort of wish that I would have taken advantage of that a little bit more early on.
Yeah, ask your professors. I mean, I've met so many students through, I'm going to pick on Karen Russell again, but she sent me a lot of people, as is the dean. So they taught all of us. They know us, so they'll connect you.
Yeah. I'd also just add too to stay in touch with, if anyone does News Source, if you guys are in News Source, yeah, love it. We called ours the Broadcast Fam, and it's so crazy because a lot of the people I graduated with, one is an ESPN reporter, one's anchoring the news in Miami, and we all really stay in touch, and that's gonna be really helpful when you're dealing with contracts or different things that again you are very specific to the industry, and I still really stay in touch with them, so that's something important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to working at the visitor center, that community, I mean, really was the best communicators, the best, most thoughtful friends, and that continues to be my community in New York City. And I'm just such a fan of everybody, and they're doing such amazing things. That's the thing. When you find other alumni who are doing amazing things, just to connect, I feel like we're part of the Marvel universe or something. We're all superpowers. And that's my segue. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yes. I totally agree that what you said about follow up. I think about sometimes you'll just get an email, you might miss it, and then I'll think back, geez, have I missed an email from somebody that reached out? I don't want to be a jerk and not respond to that. Never feel bad about following up again, because people, it really is true. I think anybody who went to Georgia and is doing something like what we're doing is be so happy to talk to any students. If you want to talk to me, just go through Biddle. He's sent plenty of people my way in LA, and I usually after the third email get back to him. And the other thing that's cool now, that's Georgia specific, is all the production here. It's when I go on the set of Loki, in the production office were friends of mine that I went through Grady classes with. And on set, if there's a PA that I can make a connection with that went to Georgia, it's suddenly, okay, that's a person that's gonna stick out in my mind. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to tell people where, that you went to Georgia, because that's a powerful network, especially when you're on set somewhere.
So one last question before we open it to the audience for some questions. If we want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect?
Instagram. Follow me. I'm just kidding, but no, seriously, DM me.
Number 2.
I do. I love to do DMs. Okay.
What's your handle?
Oh, right. At EMCURL, Curl.
It's easy. She's verified. It's no big deal.
My hype man.
It's truly your brand ambassador.
Follow me on Twitter. I'll follow you back, and then we can DM.
Yeah, same Twitter. I'm just at Chad Mumm. Slide into the DMs, I guess, or I'm just chad@voxmedia.com, so you can always email me. But ask the dean; he's got my email, cell phone, whatever. Always happy. If you're out in LA, I'll take you to get a coffee.
Yeah. Instagram, email. Yeah.
Biddle. or in Instagram at fake Michael Waldron. Is the way.
Stop. I love that.
Great, thank you. Hope you guys wrote that down. All right, questions. Who has them? Yes, the one hand.
Hi, I was just curious, when you first started the industry, what was your first major setback and how did you overcome it?
Danielle, right?
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi. Great question, Danielle. For me, I think this is a critical part of the story. Moving to New York, although was the fulfillment of a dream, was also pretty difficult. And there was a season, especially toward the beginning, and you know this, but I was slammed by anxiety. And I'm not talking about I'm a little nervous for this assignment today, the good butterflies, actual anxiety. And I had to kind of navigate, knowing in my body, what is happening? Am I having a panic attack? What is this? What may be triggering it? And actually getting the help to fix that. Doing so much better now, but I share that as part of the story because that can happen. And if that happens, there are plenty of resources to to make that. I think that jarred me a little bit.
Yeah.
You know that when I first moved to New York, it's like, what's happening to me? And then getting the help that I needed to work through that.
I have a colleague, an Irish colleague, and he'd say, Lauren, or to anyone, he's like, if you keep your noggin on right, we'll be just fine. And I think that's really true. I think, whatever's going on professionally, you still, I've been in very high pressure, crazy situations through this role. And making sure you're taking that time to really keep your noggin on straight, as my friend Ian would say, is really important. And I don't think people talk enough about that when it comes to professional development and success in the workplace. So I'd really prioritize that.
I feel like, again, to quote my queen, Casey Musgraves, she would say, you can't be everybody's cup of tea, but why would you want to be? And I love that song. It's called Silver Linings. But I like it because I think, when you're in a public-facing job, there's always going to be someone who doesn't get it, or they don't necessarily see the magic, but there's going to be someone who does, and there's an audience for everyone. So again, keep perfecting your craft, and people are going to tell you no, and they're going to tell you it's not a right fit. But you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that the skills that you're bringing to the table are worth it, and they're going to be worth it to someone watching you. And so I think it's important that you keep the mission, because again, you're going to have people tell you no or tell you that you're not right for this, but you are right for it. Believe in yourself and keep going and listen to Casey Musgraves, okay?
I wrote a spec episode of the show Workaholics, which was, I thought was super funny, and I was like, man, especially coming out of college, I was like, I'm perfect for this show. This is just a show about guys kind of my age acting like idiots. I'm gonna write a great spec episode, and I'm gonna get hired on this show. And I wrote this episode of it, and lo and behold, somebody I knew the editor for Workaholics. And I was like, can you pass along my script to this person? Which is the worst thing you can do. Somebody who works on a show doesn't want to read a fake script for the show they work on. But I sent it to them, and I kind of anxiously awaited the life-changing call. This is the best script we've ever read. We want to bring you on. And I got an email back like 2 weeks later that was so scathing in its evisceration of the script. I think the first sentence was, I don't even know what to say. And it just got more punishing from there in his assessment. And my wife is here. She was sitting there with me when I read it, and I was like, and the truth is, that's, in any creative work, you fail 99 times a day. But you just got to get it right once. One good idea makes for a successful day, and so that was that failure was great. That was the first brush with serious rejection, and you realize that it doesn't kill you. It doesn't really have any reflection on who you are as a person, and then you get up and you write a better script that isn't a speck of Workaholics, and you keep going. So that was, I would say that, along with every failure that would follow, were far more important to me than any successes, and those are the experiences that made and have continued to make me a better writer.
So I've got sort of two examples that I think illustrate this a lot. I think, for one, I get asked a lot by students, like, what are your goals? And I honestly don't have goals. I have a direction. So I just think about, am I going north still? I want to be in this industry. I want to be doing stuff that matters. I want to be someone that people can get things made with. And I don't, it's do I want to be head of Disney? I don't know. I just want to go north. And I'll know if I'm still going north. So that to me is just pick your direction and stay at it. And I think that kind of perseverance will take you super far, because your career is going to be full of setbacks and disappointments, even at our level, all the time. And so two really quick examples of what I mean by that. So when I first moved to New York, it was the height of the financial crisis. I think I got there the week that Bear Stearns went under, and it was economic collapse. And I was frustrated that I couldn't get a job like immediately, you know, and I was thinking I would just walk into the city and immediately be like, you know, on the 51st floor at NBCU. And I remember like walking around with resumes that I had printed out, and I had like bought very expensive paper because I thought that was gonna matter. And I was like going to like the HBO offices and NBCU, and I just went to the security guards and I was like, here's my resume. You know, and they're like, kid, you know, get out of here. And then the first job I got in New York, I worked at this commercial director who did a lot of like high-speed tabletop videography or cinematography, and he just was like, I need someone to like change the toilets and like clean up around the place. And so I did, and I would like, he did a lot of like culinary stuff, so I would be like scrubbing these like fry stations, and I was like, wait a minute, you know, I'm with this great education, and here I am like in a kitchen like scrubbing out a fryer, which is pretty humbling. But after the studio would close every night, I could just like have the run of the place. So I'd like pull out his lights, and we would, you know, I taught myself how to use a film camera and you know, and just started making stuff. And it turns out his agent, who repped him for commercials, he would get all these digital offers, and you know, he was a big time, like do big Nike commercials and McDonald's and all that stuff. And he didn't need the money for the little $10,000 digital spot. But then his agent would see me in there like making these little spec films, and so he would start throwing them to me. And so then 6 months after being there, I was directing like a commercial for IKEA. And it was like 10 grand, and I spent every dime of it on the shot. I didn't make a single dollar, but it looked amazing, and that sort of put me on the map, and then just kind of kept going from there. And then just to give another kind of more recent example, 5 years ago, I was sitting in my office, and a woman walked in with an incredible story that I thought would make for an incredible doc. And so we started developing it, and every step of it was like setback after setback. She had gone through something, you know, really terrible in her life, and the person who did it to her like had not been tried, and so there was like legal hurdles, and then but we persevered through that. Like 3 years later, we pitched it all over Hollywood. This is an amazing show. This will be a great series. Nobody bought it, even though every person in the room had something or knew somebody that had something similar happen to them. And I just was like, this person's got something great, and we're gonna just stay with it. So we stay with it, we stay with it, we stay with it. And last week it premiered on Hulu, and it's like gone viral. It's like one of our biggest shows we've ever made. It's called Keep This Between Us on Hulu. So, you know, that was 5 years in the making. I thought we'd turn that around in 6 months, and you know, it'd be on Netflix. And now, you know, it's making a huge impact on the world. And you know, you just like have to grind it out and know that, you know, if I would have said in that moment, like when she walked in my office, this is going to take 5 years, I couldn't think that far ahead. But, you know, you just have to keep grinding and sticking with the things you believe in, and great things will happen.
Perseverance is key. Any other questions? Yes.
So you guys said like your experience here, and like all the network connections you made, like you made all the difference. But if all that was wiped away and like you had no resume, you had to start over today, what would you do first?
Could everyone hear that in the back? Okay. Do you mind repeating just a little louder?
I said with all their experience and network connections wiped away and no resume, what would be the first thing that they would do starting right now?
Learn how to dance, start a TikTok.
Go massively viral.
Go viral, just
Become
call
an
it.
influencer.
No, that's a great question.
I would hustle and try and get a job on a set here in Atlanta, because that was a thing that didn't exist when I graduated, and getting that experience on a set in any capacity, you'll learn so much. You'll learn how tedious it is to make a movie or a television show, but also how fun it is, and you'll make connections that will certainly change your life. And as you're doing that, after your 16-hour day, come home and write a script. And I think that's what I would do is get a job on set, get that experience, try and get a script under my belt, and then go to LA, and then change toilet seats somewhere, anywhere they'd have me.
For me, it's probably like, I just didn't want to ever have like a traditional path, I think. I never felt comfortable like with the big entertainment, like start at the bottom and incrementally work your way up. So I had a very sort of roundabout way of going about it. But if I could do it again with no connections, I think I wouldn't be afraid of like the mail rooms. Like I think going to work at a big talent agency or management company is like going to graduate school for entertainment. And I don't know if, how often that gets brought up here. I know we've got internships and things like that, but like starting out at the bottom at a place like WME or CAA is the way to get exposure to like every facet of the industry. And for me, it's like, there's a bunch of creative people. I'm sort of more of an entertainment business person now, but like you get to see how the sausage is made in a way that that you won't get necessarily being on set. And definitely being on set is super valuable. But I wouldn't be afraid of like those programs. And so many young, successful executives, they got their start that way, and they learn like, oh, you know what, I'd rather be in music, or I'd rather be in talent management, or I'm going to go from talent management to go be a network exec, or I'm going to go just write, and I've met people who do all those jobs who got that exposure. So, if you like think about that as sort of grad school for this business, I wouldn't be afraid of those programs.
It's also a great way to make a network of friends in a new city. I didn't do that, but a lot of my friends came from, a lot of my best friends in LA are guys and girls that came from kind of one class in the mailroom at an agency. So in a new city, if you've got aspirations to be an agent, be a manager, be a producer, or on that side of things, it is a great way just to meet like-minded folks.
I also know I was joking about TikTok, but I'm kind of serious in the sense that especially if you want to do on camera, like I tell a lot of students this that reach out, is it's important, again, to practice. And so content creation is everywhere, and the digital landscape changes every single day. That oftentimes, the people that we're interviewing at iHeartRadio are songwriters that their song went viral on TikTok now that are just getting signed to huge record deals. It is insane, I think, how social media really has changed the trajectory for music and for artists, and also for our job too. And a lot of people ask me, like, should I start a podcast? Should I do this? What next step should I take to get to this place? And to that, I say that every person that I know that's in a similar role as mine has a different path of how they got there. And they're going to tell you a different way to do it, which is freeing in a sense that there's a lot of ways to get there. And so, again, take your time, practice what you like. If you want to do entertainment recaps, then do it on TikTok. If you want to write songs, then post it on TikTok. And again, just cultivate and practice. And I remember, actually, I watched recently this interview with Ed Sheeran, and the interviewer asked him if he...
Ed Sheeran.
Oh. Well, that's another story another time. Ed Sheeran asked him if he thought he was good, like if he's always been good at this, and he said no. He's like, I just practice every day. And granted, Ed Sheeran, he's next level. He's obviously good, but he practices every single day. And I really think, again, when it comes to creation or putting yourself out there, being an on-camera talent, you actually have to practice what your interview skills looks like, how you look on camera. I talk to myself in the mirror. I didn't intend to say that, but I do. It's just all of that stuff is important. And again, you might as well just try it now while again we're in such a digital age.
I mean, for me, what I was looking for post-graduation was something to allow me to continue exploring. Like, I think yes, you can take a first step, take a job. For me, I was so drawn to the NBC Universal Page program because you get to move to New York, you're basically signing a one-year lease, you get to do a one-year program and rotate through different assignments and navigate what you want. And there's so much under that umbrella, from E to NBC Sports to HR, corporate events, Bravo, all of that, getting to kind of experiment and explore a little bit and then kind of find your way from there. I think those programs are becoming even more popular now as people are, I just need to continue seeing what options are out there.
I kind of mentioned this for working in politics, working on the Hill, working on a campaign. It's really important. But I think something that cuts across at what everyone has said is you learn so much when you're at that beginner level because you are kind of being able to see the entire picture, the spectrum, how the sausage is made. And the things you will learn in your first few years, you will take with you for the rest of your career. And so when you get in those positions, take really good notes because you might need that information 10 years down the line when you're running the teams and you're hiring the people. And so that experience, while it might not seem as valuable because it's your first, it might be one of your most important.
Oh my gosh, I'll go with you first and then Elisa.
No pressure.
Hi, my name's Hope. So this summer I participated in the Grady New York City program, which was super exciting. Actually, I just went to the
I know.
But while the experience was really exciting, I definitely felt very small in such a big city.
Well, I love that feeling about New York. That's probably why I moved to New York instead of LA when I went out. Before my senior year, I visited my friend who was at USC. We went to high school together and sort of just spent a couple weeks like running around LA and trying to think, am I going to LA? Am I going to New York? And the thing that bugged me about LA was that everybody, it seemed, was like in the industry in some way. And I don't know, it just felt really claustrophobic because you were like, everybody you were at a party with, it's like, I know so-and-so, or my dad does this, or whatever. It was like all very like insular and LA and very kind of Hollywood. What I loved about going to New York, it was like, you know, I lived on 96th Street, and just walking to the subway, you know, went from an apartment that I was sharing with 8 people, like for no money, to like $20 million brownstones, like all on the same street. And like the hedge fund people and the curator for the Met and the policy people at the UN, they're like all waiting in line to get a bagel together. And it just felt like democratic in a way, but also the exposure. Like I ended up rooming, you know, one of my friends was like a framer's apprentice, you know, that I roomed with, and the other person worked at the UN, and like you had so much exposure to just so much of just life, and I thought that was what I loved about New York. I don't know.
My favorite thing about New York is we were talking about this before, is to go to American Whiskey, which is the place where all the dogs watch the games, and we do the same thing in DC. I think it's a really, really cool, special thing that I'm sure other colleges do, but ours is definitely the best. And so, yeah, if you do move, definitely check that out.
I mean, I'm just grateful to work for a company that, like NBC Universal to me, feels like Georgia in a way. And the Page program made a difference in that. But getting to walk through the building, knowing security, knowing catering, knowing people you worked on an assignment with at WNBC, and then waving to someone you know at E, like suddenly that big building starts to feel small like a campus. And I think if you have that mentality and can kind of build those relationships, whatever company you're in, makes that feel like home a little bit more, makes the big city suddenly feel a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
I'm scared of New York. That's why I live in LA. But I think in any of these big cities, I remember that feeling. I remember the first time I went out in LA and I was like, I can't wear shorts. I got to wear pants to the bar. And but I think the truth is, a lot of that feeling of, oh, I'm such a small fish in a giant pond is in your head. That's you're imagining that in a lot of ways. You know, your world is as small or big as you make it. And the truth is, a lot of the people that you might look around and think, oh, they're doing it. They're at the top of the mountain. I'm here at the bottom. They're probably looking at you thinking, I wish I was them. I wish I was back at the start of my journey, because that was when I had the most fun. So make it small, you know, make your world small. It's you're there, you've got your work, you've got the folks that you'll meet when you're starting out, you know, and you'll all kind of be in it together, and that network will build out, and before you know it, you'll wake up one day and it'll feel like home.
Just to add to that, actually, I love that. When you're in the early part of your career, it's like you have so much flexibility, you know. You have responsibility, obviously, to yourself and to your work, and, you know, you've got to, like, eat and have a place to live. But other than that, like, you've got so much freedom and flexibility to try things on, you know. And, I mean, you can hear my third kid back there making noise. My daughter was sitting right up here. I have 3 kids now. You know, get further along your career, like you get responsibility and it changes in a real way, and you start to lose some of that flexibility. And so I definitely think back to my early 20s and just how much fun and how wide open things were. And there's actually, I read it this morning, there's an amazing article in The Atlantic by Derek Thompson, who's a staff writer there, about job advice, which I suggest you all look up and read. And one thing that really stuck with me is, you know, his experience was that technically, based on the data, if you move careers, or if you move jobs a lot in your 20s, like statistically, you're going to have better pay, you know, when you're more senior. And he's like, I didn't even take that advice, because my first job was writing at The Atlantic, and I've now been there for like 9 years, and I, you know, have a great job. But he said he changed roles inside The Atlantic a lot. So I think that's another thing that happened in my career. It's like I was like running a digital media studio. I was a blogger at one point. I edited the tech blog Engadget. Like, that has nothing to do with making shows for HBO. Like, and I had a chance to change roles, even within Vox Media. Like, I went from running our digital studio to running our ad agency to then starting a television business. Like, trying things on, like, don't be afraid, especially when you're early in your career. You can try things out, and I think that's like, I would look at someone in your position and be like, the freedom. It's exciting.
I have the best memories of sleeping on an air mattress. Being so broke, I would drink the free Coca-Colas that the Senate office would get, and the Snickers marathon bars, which I still, if anyone brings those around, I just want to vomit. But I was living off of those because I was so broke, new to DC, but I had the best time, and I learned so much, and the world is just so open when you're at that point. So I think you all have so much to look forward to.
Totally. I think we have time for one more quick question before we have to wrap this up. And Elisa, you have the
Hey
floor.
guys, thank y'all for being here. My name's Elisa. It's so great to have you guys in person. But so my question was, Kevin, you talked like about the anxiety you face like moving to New York, and I'm wondering like in those moments where maybe you each faced doubt, like what's a moment in your career where you really felt like solidified, like, oh, I've made it, like I'm on this right path, I'm moving north, like you talked about, Chad.
Well, for me, it was December 8th of 2017. It was the day I arrived at work. Ed Sheeran was there, but so was Zac Efron. And that truly, like, anyone love High School Musical? I mean, that probably came out when y'all were like 3. But truly, that was a milestone for me. I was like, if I ever meet Zac Efron, and I did that day, his eyes sparkle as much as you think they would. But really, like, I soaked that in. I remember so vividly, my best friends, Tori and Allie, were there. They were in the crowd, obviously, to meet Zac Efron as well. And I MC the experience on our plaza every day. And every single one of the hundreds of people in that crowd knew how excited I was to meet Zac Efron. It was maybe mildly unprofessional, but so he came outside. It was just one of the most special mornings, and I think in that moment, again, it was like one of the true first major pinch me moments of my career, just saying, like, you know what? Those things are not lost on you. Whatever that ultimate dream is, it is going to happen. Yeah. Stick with it, and your December 8th of 2017 can happen too, okay?
You know what I will say? It's interesting. I know I talked a lot about E! News, but for me, talking about Ultimate Dreams, that was it for me, where I really wanted to be on E! And that was like always my sights were set. And to be totally honest with you, I actually did end up auditioning for E! And got really far and got to the final rounds. I was in LA. It was this moment for me. I mean, I'm FaceTiming Kevin, I'm crying, and they're like, we're actually gonna go a different direction. And that was crushing. And at the time, I was like, I cannot believe this. I really thought that this is gonna be my life. I had planned on moving to LA. I was doing the whole thing. And just last week, come to find out, the shows that they were casting for, actually, they canceled them and they're moving in a different direction because digital landscape changes that fast. And looking back, I'm just so glad at where it worked out. And I share that story to say that sometimes you have this idea in your head of what you want your life to look like and what you think it's going to happen in this dream that you're living, and you get there and you might want something else. And I'm so happy that when I got this call from my boss, Ina now, I was living with 2 roommates, I was in Brooklyn, auditioning for a year, and just 6 months alone at iHeartRadio. I get the call, and she's like, we're going to send you the talent contract. Welcome to iHeart. And I remember just full body chills. My roommates were listening outside. I mean, I dropped the phone. I screamed. I put myself on mute first. Because then I was like, let's negotiate the salary. Put myself on mute. But then I was so excited in that moment. Something about it solidified for me where it's like, okay, I'm officially a host. I don't have to pretend that this is a dream anymore. I'm actually doing it. And that moment was so much better for me than this moment at E! That I had dreamed up in my head that anyways wouldn't have worked out long term. So all that to say that keep your options open. Obviously have those goals and those dreams, but it's okay, and allow yourself the space that if they change, that's going to be for the best for you too.
But I will just quickly add to that, back to the very first moment Emily and I met at orientation when she mentioned Juliana Rancic. You were working at Refinery at the time, hosting a red carpet adjacent to Juliana Rancic. I looked at that picture today. Like they took it, yeah, of course. It's my wallpaper. No. But truly, I just think that, you know, even though your dreams have gone in a different direction, there's something really special about that interaction where you get to tell Juliana, like, you kept me moving north, but that is such a special thing, and just stick with it.
That was my Zac Efron moment. Of course I had to go up to her. I got a full photo. Yeah. She was like, did you have fun? I said, yeah. That was our interaction. It was great.
I have 2. One was we're not in Kansas anymore, which was when I staffed our CEO at the time, Jack Dorsey, with former President Trump. meeting between them in the White House in the Oval Office. So that was one of those where I just sat there and I was like, this is the most surreal moment of my life. How did Lauren from Marietta, Georgia get here? And then the second was I testified before the UN on behalf of Twitter in front of Theresa May when she was Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders. And again, I was just like, how did I get here? But those are the moments where, you're really nervous, you work really hard to prepare, you do it, and I actually was sitting next to these foreign ministers from, I think one was from Algeria, some other countries where women aren't really allowed to do anything, and they just looked at me and they let the women here from the tech companies, and I was like, yes, we're here. And that was a moment where I was just like, I feel very fortunate and blessed, and this wild career has brought me to some really unexpected places, and I really love that about it.
I guess in 2020, when Doctor Strange 2 started shooting over in London, it was the first time a movie I'd written had been made. I'd worked in television up to that point, and I was there for the first day. I was there for the entire production, but on the first day of filming, I walked on to the set, and it was like Doctor Strange's sanctum, and I was just like, holy crap, this is it. This is like, I can't believe it. And I've got a face mask on and a blast shield helmet for COVID and everything, and I'm looking around at the lights, and I'm like, wow, you really did it. And I just trip over the dolly track and like stumble, and it's like I almost take out all the cameras. And everybody turns, and the AD's like, Michael Waldron, everybody, and I get a big round of applause from the crew, and I was like, all right, that's it. I made it. So that was one of those moments for me.
I don't have like a moment that I could pinpoint as like the thing. Certainly, like as you're going through your career, you're going north. It's like also I use the stair analogy a lot. It's like sometimes you're on the stairs, sometimes you're on a landing, and it's just you got to find more stairs. And I like to think about it as like one foot after the other. It's like so easy to have like something really amazing, like having your movie, like Benedict Cumberbatch, like walk onto that set for the first time. It's like, but the path to get there is so like incremental, and you just kind of have to be like taking it one step at a time. I don't know, probably like my most vivid entertainment memory was actually like the first time I ever pitched a television show to the head of HBO, and I was like, this is gonna go great. And we went in, and I had this amazing pitch, and I'm like, yeah, this is doing a sales thing. And then he's like, cool, so you hit play, turn on HBO, it's 9 o'clock, you see the HBO logo, like what's the first thing you see? Comes up from black, what are you seeing? And I was just like, yeah, it's gonna be great. Like I had no idea. And he gave me some amazing advice. He was basically like, look, you don't have a show. Like you have an idea, you have some talent, a talent attached. Like this could be a thing. You could start doing some development with us, and one day you'll have a show on the air. But like next time you come back, like bring me something that we can actually buy. And that was like the moment that I realized, at least for the job that I'm in now in Hollywood. So I had been in the advertising world, and when you're pitching ad stuff, it's like you've watched Mad Men or seen Mad Men or heard about Mad Men. It's like, what can I do to get you to say yes is a little bit of like the way you sell ads and things like that. In entertainment, it's like the opposite, actually. Like you want to walk into the room and have them like terrified to say no. And that's like the best advice I could give to somebody about selling stuff in Hollywood is like, you basically need to walk into the room with the attitude that like there's only 12 people in the industry that can say yes to stuff, really, at least in television. And you just want them terrified that you're going to walk out of their office and walk across the street to their competitor, and they're going to say yes, and it's going to be a hit for them. Because you don't really get fired in Hollywood for greenlighting something that's not a hit. Most things aren't hits. But you get fired for passing on something that's a hit for your competitor. So it's just a different mindset. And I remember that feeling really explicitly. And that show that I ended up, poorly pitching to the head of HBO at the time, ended up selling to Netflix, and we made 75 episodes of it. And they didn't get it. HBO didn't. And so, it's just you've got to kind of, but when it came back out, like I had every answer, what is the first frame? Well, I'll tell you the minute 19 what you're seeing. I'll tell you minute 40, like, and I'll tell you what the next 20 episodes are going to be. And so it was just over preparing. It was a show called Explained on Netflix.
Yeah, I love that show. Yeah,
So.
we watched that, yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here, and congratulations on 40 under 40. And thank you all for coming. Give a round of applause. I believe our honorees have to go to tape by 11:45, somewhere around then, but I...
Can I say one more thing?
Okay.
Can you give it up for Darby?
I don't know why I'm clapping.
And last thing, I'm just looking around, Diane and Karen, I'm looking at so many faculty members, professors, heads of their department, and the dean, and these people dedicate their lives so that this can happen. So I just wanted to give a round of applause to each of them too, because only possible because of you.